Hey, Brett.
Hi, Dean.
Brett, this is episode 198. You are on episode number 2. So it's been a bit.
So long ago.
It's
So
been a
long
minute.
ago.
You were on with Michelle Tresimer. I don't know if you remember Michelle.
Yep.
You were on with
Yep. That
Michelle
was a fun
Tresimer.
one.
She's fantastic.
It was fun.
Okay. So tell folks a little bit about you, and then I'm going to switch over to Ben, and then we're going to get into some questions.
Sounds awesome. So, Brett Schklar, I'm the founder and CEO of Grow Powered. We're a team of about 35 fractional CMOs that do primary work in B2B technology. And then we've also seen a huge upswing in the CPG space, consumer packaged goods.
Oh, all right. Right on. And Ben, hi.
Nice to be here, Dean. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Tell folks a little bit about you.
So I am the founder and CEO of Wolf's Edge Integrators. We're a team of fractional COOs, currently 12 strong, all people who have owned and scaled businesses that look like the businesses our clients want to have. So they fulfill that number 2 role and use their experience of having done what they want to do before to get people to have the future they want and empower them to be freed up from the day to day to do whatever's their superpower.
All right. And I guess I typically disclose. I had to do it yesterday on the recording with Chief Outsiders, and I had to do it the day before on the recording with Sales Acceleration. As I have done like work with Ben. Ben's a client, and so it's not why he's here. It's not why any of those others were here either. He's here because of what he knows and what he lives. But for disclosure, Wolf's Edge Integrators is a client. Okay, so Brett, here's my first question. It's been a crazy 5 years. Just crazy 5 years, right? And along with everything else that was happening, the whole fractional executive thing kind of ballooned at the same time. So like what trends are you seeing like right now, or as you look maybe like 12 months into the future about like fractional executive demand?
So the demand side is interesting. I mean, the supply side is going, gangbusters. I think,
Yeah.
the Kool-Aid's being drunk and everybody's joining the cult. On the demand side, I continue to not see people asking for fractional CMOs. I see people, in particular CEOs of mid-market companies, looking to solve problems or to change an approach or to do something new or different. And a fractional CMO happens to be how they get there. While I continue to see the supply growing and the conversation on the supply side being huge, I don't see that same conversation or demand or ask on the CEO side.
Okay. And Brad, how about you? Like,
I guess
what do you,
the biggest patterns I'm seeing recently, well, I would agree with what Brett said that the supply side is certainly growing a lot. And I do actually see a lot of demand side on the fractional COO or fractional integrator side. But what I also see is in recent months, a big slowdown in sales cycle. And that I think I would attribute it primarily to market uncertainty, world uncertainty, tariff uncertainty, all kinds of things like that. And so there's a feeling of general uncertainty in the world. So even after we got past the election, I thought, okay, the dam's going to break.
Right.
And okay, now we know who's going to be the next president, at least in the United States, and we can have stability. But I still see the hesitancy and the sales cycle just extending out a lot longer. People more hesitant and to pull the trigger. And so I do see both. I do see increased demand. Like pipeline's great in terms of that, but things are slowing down, pulling the trigger slow.
And Ben, I'll hop on that and I'll say I
Yeah.
completely agree, with that sentiment. People are feeling like they're in survival mode or they can't think more than like 2 weeks to a month out. And they're probably not saying we need a better operating system for our business right now. They're saying we need to know how we're going to deal with inventory or deal with payroll over the next couple of weeks. And we've got employees saying that their costs are going up. Their cost of living is going up and they need a cost of living adjustment, and companies just aren't there to be able to do it. So it's survival mode out there is the way I feel like it's feeling.
Yeah. So having said that, for both of you, like what right now is the hardest part of scaling a fractional executive business? You say there's lots of supply. Ben, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So the challenge in scaling a fractional business, I would say, for me, is that most aspects of scaling, just as the owner of a firm that does this,
Mm-hmm.
is relatively new. I mean, yes, you mentioned Chief Outsiders before. Places like Chief Outsiders are, doing this on a very large scale already, and doing it on the COO side. You think things work a little different than on the CMO or
Mm-hmm.
other sides, and so so figuring out how do you at a level of scale do a sales process that works for a large number of potential candidates that I might be placing from our team. How do we keep a pulse on what's happening with the engagements and catch
Right.
any potential hiccups that might be coming down the pike early and address them early, uh, and strike that balance between trusting people that are highly experienced professionals to do what they do, and not micromanage in any way, but at the same time keep enough of a pulse on it that we and they are able to keep a pulse on it and do that at scale. It's not just
Right.
like, me and two other people. So I could just easily just text the clients, like, to figure out how that works at scale is, those are two examples I would say of the challenges that I'm seeing of scaling an organization like this of fractional executives, to be able to be the easy button, right? You don't have to
Right.
wonder, hey, do I have availability? Am I the right fit? Do I have the right industry background? No, I've got a whole team. I have the right fit. I have the right background. It's not me, but I have that. And so that's the benefit. It's easy button, but how to make that work at scale, there's definitely some growing pains that we're experiencing.
And Brett, how about you? What is the hardest part of scaling a fractional exec business right now?
So I want to be careful about the word scale because for me that means multiples. And when you're in the human business and human excellence business, which I think we all can appreciate, there's growth, and I think of it as gradual growth, but not necessarily the multiplier scale. So for us, our growth, we don't need as much growth because our retention has been so amazingly strong. When I started this business, just a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I really was factoring that we'd have maybe, a 6 month to maybe a 9 month engagement. Now we're going on 15, our average right now is just over 15 months. And so that gives me a lot of fuel that's already in the tank without having to fill up more stuff in the fuel tank. And so for me, it's maintaining that existing customer, that feels like they're continually getting benefit month after month after month, because we only do month to month engagements, right? We don't want any long-term relationships if people don't want us there anymore. But keeping that average of 15 months has been huge. Then we just get to put a little bit of, a little bit of chef's little sprinkles on top, and then we get a little bit of gradual growth. But I don't have a board of directors. I don't have investors that are trying to push me to grow faster than I want to or need to.
Right.
So I'm pretty lucky about that.
All right. Okay, so as we record this, it's the middle of the day on just a regular Friday, and you're both leaders at fractional executive companies, and yet here you are out here talking about the business. And so here's my question, right? What role does like your personal brand play in sort of your company's visibility? Is it even important for a CEO to have a personal brand? Uh, Brett, we'll
Yeah, I
start with you.
think because I started this business and because I think that the values, the core values, and the mission that I put together is so important. Um, I do have to be the voice of the company, and as such, it is my voice that's out there. It is my personal brand, as you say. But my
Mm-hmm.
personal brand is really about advocating about the excellence that we have on the team. So I'm kind of the vehicle,
Right.
and I showcase a lot of the talent that we have on our team and on our bench.
Ben, how about you? How important is personal brand for Wolf's Edge these days?
I would say that our personal brand, or my personal brand, is pretty important for Wolf's Edge.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news is that we're trying to be very intentional about expanding that out and having our team members really become recognizable and share their own thought leadership and develop their own brands as well. Also, just using our revenue team in terms of in terms of what they're accomplishing with, on social media, on blogs, on videos. And yes, I do provide a lot of that content also, but so do some of our other team
Right.
members, and some of our people have brought in leads, either for themselves or other members of the firm. And so it's something that we're intentionally trying to diversify the brand to, over time, decrease my centrality
Right.
to that. But it is also a big part of it.
Okay. Ben, uh, let's go back in time a little bit to the sort of beginning, like year one of Wolf's Edge, right? I'm going to do the same thing with Brett and Grow Powered. So when you sort of came out onto the market, did you already have like a positioning or a message that clicked with the right audience, with prospects, or did you have to iterate it over time? Did you get lucky and just like have the right thing to say at the right time and people were receptive, or did you have to sort of figure out how to say
No,
things and what to
we
say?
certainly iterated. All I could go with at the beginning is what sounds like a good idea and what would sound to me like it would make sense to another person, and iterate that a lot over
Right.
time. Year one for me was 2019. I was a solo practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
didn't bring other people into the firm till 2021. And it was certainly a very iterative process. And I'm in the process now of taking like a keynote or an address that I've been doing a few times now. And I mean, it's just so much iteration. I mean, hours and hours and hours of work after each time to, try and do the next phase. Just so, I mean, now after like 3 or 4 times, the changes are getting a little smaller. So that's an encouraging sign.
Right.
But for each stage, it's not easy coming up with the right message and iterating it. It's why people need someone like Dean Way, right? Because it's
Yeah.
uh, it is challenging to come up with the right message. And strategic coach and Dan Sullivan talks about test your product with the check writers, right? That's what they always talk about. Test it with check writers. So until you're talking to prospects and talking to people or selling what you do to people, see what the reception is. The things that sound the best in your head or on your computer, you just don't know how it's going to come across.
And Brett, how about Grow Powered? You guys have like kind of a slick image. Did you jump off that way, or did you have to sort of like
It's pretty
figure
cool,
it out?
Ben. I think you and I have a very similar timeline. I incorporated the business around 2020, probably spent about a year doing, sort of working out the bugs on my own, doing some of the work. And then I think it was the end of 21 or early 22, I started to add people on. And then with AI coming on, generative AI coming onto the scene as quickly as it did, it gave me, unbelievably large amounts of fuel to the fire to allow things to scale. Um, and so for us, I think, our core message has always been unlock growth. Our core message has always been to be the CEO's, greatest ally. Our core value is that CEOs don't understand marketing, and they don't want to understand marketing in most cases. They just want somebody to take care of the crap. And we do that, and we allow the CEO to have confidence in what we do. So I think at a macro level, that's really, that stayed the same. And then I recruit people based on those values. Now, I will say, if we talk about the idea of, um, yeah, I'll stop there and continue on a little later. But yeah.
Okay, so like Brett, let's add on to that a little bit then. Every fractional executive company, and I don't mean like the single shingle folks. And most of my work comes from them, so I love them. But this is not the question about them. But every company of fractional executives has direct competitors now. Like, there's no such thing as we specialize in this kind of fractional chief role, and like no one else in the marketplace is there. And so, like, how are you guys differentiating these days? on the CMO side?
I started, I would say around 2022, 2023, I really was following the competitors very
Mhm.
closely, as far as other companies that were doing fractional CMO work, as well as other types of fractional CXO work. And it was driving me freaking nuts. And I was driving my team freaking
Yeah.
nuts. Um, and I decided to stop. And most of our business comes from partner relationships, strategic partnerships,
Right.
people that also have the voice of the CEO. And because of that, I don't have a typical lead generation funnel like a lot of other companies do. And
Mm.
our growth has been much more organic and much more natural. And because of that, and obviously our work has to speak for itself, like no question about that. We only have about 7 strategic partners. And so if we really, if we screw the pooch with one of them, that's a pretty big chunk of the biz. So
Yeah.
I stopped paying attention. Also, it's getting very noisy out there. Um, not only for the fractional CMO business, but if we take like, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of like EOS and all of that. And I love the idea of a fractional COO, and I probably could use one very soon. So Ben put me in your lead list, but I just stopped paying attention to a lot of others, and I just started paying more attention to the customers and to the fractional CMOs are a part of the
Right.
team. And the noise went away, and I haven't seen the growth slow. So, yeah.
All right. And Ben, I'm going to tell you something now. I think that the fractional COOs have a much harder time differentiating than some of the other roles. And I see, I'm approached by various either solopreneurs or other like smaller firms, fractional CEOs, and they almost all come in and they have your angle, right? The very one, in fact, the one that I helped write like 2.5 years ago. Like they all come to me and said, like, this is what like these guys do, and this is what we want to say. And I said, okay, that is what they do. I know. And B, you can't say the same thing that someone else says and be differentiated. Like that's the literal definition of differentiation is you're saying something that your competitors either can't say or won't say. And so no, you just you don't want to do the same thing and come in with finally you'll have a breather and like someone else can take care of this. Like, this is not how it works. So you guys have a hard time in the fractional COO space differentiating.
Right.
At least I
Well,
think based on the people who come to me.
you have a very unique position in terms of being able to work that through with so many people with a similar type of business.
Right.
And so what I would say is one of the things that we've been doing, since the time that we worked together, especially in the last year, I would say, yes, we could lean on,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the value that they get, obviously the experience of having run and scaled businesses that look like the kinds of businesses that people want to have.
Yep.
But what we've been focusing on the last year especially is the thought leadership and
Mm-hmm.
creating creating models and concepts that are useful for people in understanding what a great number two leader looks like. And so we have identified 3 types of number two leader that we didn't have or really articulate at the time that you and I were working together, which we now call operational, conductor, and executive. Each one
Mm-hmm.
is right. Each type is right for a different type of business, depending on where they are and depending on what
So
stage of
category
evolution they
creation.
want to get to. And so we've identified that. We've identified 4 stages of business evolution that, is going to make a difference in where a business where I don't know if we need to re-record this part, but there's been some off and on with the audio. Is that me or you guys or
No, you've been good.
okay? So maybe I should record that again because I just interrupted it.
Sure. Go ahead.
Uh, I was hearing some audio coming in and out from you, and your video was paused. So maybe that was my side.
Okay. Yeah.
Before I
So
start re-answering that question, let me just confirm. Okay, it's on the correct mic. Okay.
yeah, you
Sorry,
sound
go
good.
ahead, Dean. What were you about to say?
So yeah, so it sounds like you're doing as a way to approach differentiation, you're doing category creation, like 3 different kinds of categories now for fractional COOs.
Yeah, category creation, and I would say thought leadership. Like just trying to we're talking about things nobody else is talking about because nobody else has developed that that sort of thinking model about number two leadership. And so I would
Right.
say that thought leadership and category creation is in the past year especially sort of where we've been leaning in towards differentiating.
Yeah. Okay. Now, have you guys? Ben, we'll start with you. Have you? Did you used to do something for client acquisition, or prospecting, or outreach that you just decided doesn't work and you don't use it anymore? And then I want to ask Brett the same question.
I mean, the biggest standout example
Mm-hmm.
is, and I just only tried this for a short while, but the biggest standout example is any sort of automated lead gen appointment setting. I just like outsourcing that
Right.
as, to some sort of admin or somebody that's going to spam a bunch of people with DMs on LinkedIn or whatever methodology they might use, any sort of appointment setting or automation when it comes to that to try to get appointments as for what we do, highly trusted executive leaders, members of the leadership team, just not how people make decisions. And I would say it's tempting because so many people in the fractional executive world don't love business development. And
No.
so the best thing that you could tell them that's just going to appeal to their dark side is just to say, you don't have to do that. I'll do it all for you. You could just focus
Yeah.
on the work you do and take meetings. And so, oh, okay, I'll give you my money. And that just doesn't work. It's not a good idea. It's a waste of time and money and makes you look bad and makes everybody in this industry look bad when people get
Yeah.
spammed by people like us.
And Brett, is there an outreach channel or methodology that you guys used to use or looked at and just like, no, that's not really how it's going to work for us, and you just abandoned it?
Many frogs have been kissed. Many frogs. And there's a lot of dead lead generation programs. We've tried a lot, and we've always iterated. We always, a lot of tools that leverage AI and all this other stuff. But
Yeah.
I would say about 18 months ago, we really decided to double down on the indirect relationships that, us coming in cold to a CEO really, our odds were low and our success rate was low, and they don't know us from squat. So really, leaning in on our partnership relationships, those people who already have a lot of influence with the CEO, that's been I would say game changer, but also it eliminated a lot of steps that allows us to stay focused on our clients and stay focused on our work without having to, do a lot of babysitting of lead generation programs that just quite honestly, we were a part of the noise and we were part of the problem. And I didn't like that.
So these days, Brett, and then I'm going to switch to Ben for the same question. These days, when you're talking to prospective clients, like what's a red flag?
There's a couple. We actually have a list of about 15 red flags that
Oh,
I give to all of my fractional CMOs because we we may collect a little bit of money, but it's not a great relationship and it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And I'd say the top couple are number one, if they just sign the contract a little bit too quickly. And that sounds like the opposite of what you want to do in a business. Like you want everybody signing a contract, but if they get on board with it and they say, "Oh yeah, and they don't have any questions or trying to align what our goals are," that's a little bit of a red flag. The second one is, we have a 6-step process to really get things onboarded, and we do it quick, but we got to do it because we got to understand the way the company operates, the value system, the way that they communicate, and really the priorities for the CEO. And when they say, "Hey, I really like this idea of a roadmap and a plan, but let's just go start doing lead generation stuff,"
yeah.
that to me is another red flag that really sort of has me a little bit worried. And then the third thing is when the CEO says, "Oh, you know what? Go work with the sales leader." And specifically for fractional CMO, we find that some sales leaders are great and they have that more strategic view, but they're just trying to get deals closed.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to them to dump marketing on their lap, especially in the B2B world. In the consumer packaged goods space, it's a little bit different. So there's a couple of them, but boy, we have a lot of them.
And Ben, when you're talking to prospective clients, like what's a red flag where you're thinking these guys are not a
Couple,
fit for us? These guys might not even be a fit for any fractional COO.
right. One one red flag I would add is people who love to talk about how great they are, how great their team is, how great their
Right.
business is. So why are we talking? I think that it's a sign that, if I have to like really pull teeth to find out what's
Mm-hmm.
wrong, where's the pain, then that indicates to me that they're not in likely enough pain to be really motivated to put the work into or support.
Right.
The things that we do with them to achieve their goals are hard. And so if they're kind of mostly focused on, oh, this is how great we are, and it's very hard to pull out from them the challenges, then I worry they're not enough pain to really put the work in or support this stuff or stick through the things that are going to be hard. And another little one I would say is just related to cash is I need at the very beginning of the discovery process to understand their financial position. I need to understand what their revenue is, what their
Mm-hmm.
profitability is, what their cash flow looks like. And if they are just so underwater and and they say, oh, don't worry about it. Like it has to make sense. Their cash situation has to make sense that like this is a responsible thing to do for where they're at. Like whatever it
Right.
is that we're talking about doing together is a responsible thing to do for where they're at. Because otherwise, we're just going to maybe have the rug pulled out from under us 2 or 3 months later when the cash catches up with them.
And,
I'll tag on to something you said
mhm.
earlier on, Ben, which is, and it's number 8 on our list of 15 red flags. And when you ask them what makes you unique, what's the only thing you can do that nobody else can do, right? What's your onlyness statement? And they say, our people.
Mm.
And now I love that, there's a lot of confidence that a CEO has in the team members that he or she may
Mm.
have. But when you can't define beyond our people, that's a big challenge. Either that means that they need a lot of marketing help, or the other red flag when they say, "Oh yeah, we've worked with a couple of others, they couldn't get it done, so now we're here to talk to you." And they've been through about 3 or 4 other people that,
Mm.
in some cases, I actually respect. Sometimes the problem isn't the resources; it's the companies that have maybe unrealistic expectations or just don't want to make the changes that are needed.
Mm. Hey Ben, if you were going to start over today, like from scratch, to build like a similar company, like what would be different than 6 years ago?
I would say the biggest thing when I was starting off as a solo practitioner that I would do differently now is to be a lot pickier about target market
Mm-hmm.
and not to just pursue every call and every potential opportunity without regard to without regard to whether the potential prospect was fully target market or whether the potential referral source relationship that I'm looking to nurture or meet is has clients who are target market.
Right.
Because if someone's a fractional executive or a EOS implementer or a Vistage chair or whatever, and these are people who have a similar target market to me, and so they would be good referral relationship people, and not just anybody and everybody. So I think that I would tell my earlier self to be, there's only so much time and energy you've got, and to really hone in and just drop the nurturing of any relationship that is not going to be a strategic use of your time and energy.
And Ben, if you were going to start over, I'm sorry, Brett, if you're going to start over today, like would it be the same company but like done differently, or would it be a different company?
Boy, I tell you, I really don't like looking in the rearview mirror that much. But one of the things I had the fortune of is I had a marketing agency, excuse me, a B2B marketing agency, which I started, I grew,
Mm-hmm.
I scaled up, and I sold. And so I had learned a lot from that experience, and I brought those learnings to this. The only thing I would say, that would feel like I should do something different is, um, I started, when we all started getting our hands onto ChatGPT and the end of 2022. My only regret is really that I didn't look at how I could leverage AI in my business even faster. I think we moved pretty quickly on that, but there was a lot of opportunity that we probably could have moved even faster on. So that's something and that's why I teach a lot of AI to CEOs, and why I got the book coming out in July is to try to help people sort of accelerate their passion and their comfort and overcoming their fears of AI, because that was something I was afraid of it, and I was
Right.
afraid of it taking our jobs, and I was afraid of it, rewiring everything. And when I stopped being afraid of it and I started saying, okay, this is the biggest unfair advantage I can have, I doubled down on it.
Guys, this has been so great. Thank you so much for being here. I have one final question for each of you. So Brett and then Ben. So Brett, who should be contacting you? Like, who's the ICP? Who should be contacting you these days? And what's the preferred way to do it?
Yeah, so we really, I think, bring a lot of value to mid-market CEOs. Let's say somewhere between 10 to $15 million on the low end and about $250 million on the high end. That's where we really are able to impact change for positive.
Right.
And if fit that criteria and you're in that arena, you can always find me on LinkedIn, or on my title there. You've got growpower.com. We've got a forum on our
Mhm.
website. I would love to chat with you. We make it very easy for a quick 15-minute discovery call if you're
Right. And
interested.
Ben, who should be contacting you these days and how?
Yeah, so ideal people to contact Wolf's Edge integrators is business owners, typically around the 2 million to 30 million range. Most of them, we have, some that are bigger,
Mhm.
and people who don't have the right number two leader slash COO slash integrator in place, whether that's another person or whether that's themselves very
Right.
often, who is fulfilling or not fulfilling, as the case may be, that role effectively. And it's holding them back. They're not getting to where they need to get to. They're not spending time and energy on their superpower because they're just doing all the stuff day to day that's got to get done. And so the business is leaving millions of dollars on the table that if they could spend 20 more hours a week on their superpower, on big deals, big relationships, R&D, being the face of the company, etc., then they wouldn't be no longer leaving all that money on the table. And so people in that situation, the best way to reach out to us is wolfsedgeintegrators.com. And you can certainly reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. But we have a methodology to book a conversation on the website.
All right, guys, Brett, Ben, thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic.
Thank you,
Thanks
Dean.
everyone for watching. See you next time.
Appreciate it,
Bye.
Dean.